Hello, everyone. This is Mayor Shawyn Patterson Howard, and we want to welcome you to Let's Talk with Shawyn. Tonight, we have our Commissioner of Planning and Community Development, Commissioner James Rouse, who is an AICP and a long-term planner, here with us to discuss the comprehensive plan that the city has been working on since, I believe, the summer of 2022. So we're going to bring on our Commissioner Rouse so that he can introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself, his credentials, his work history, and what we're doing around the comprehensive plan here in Mount Vernon. So, Commissioner Rouse, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you've done and your education and background.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's joining us tonight. As Mayor said, I'm Commissioner James Rouse in the Department of Planning and Community Development. I came aboard here at Mount Vernon in February, actually Valentine's Day 2022. I've been here 3.5 years after spending over 20 years in various roles in my hometown of the Bronx, right over the border. I grew up not far from Mount Vernon on East Gun Hill Road, right off of it near Montefiore Hospital. And I came to Mount Vernon after having worked for 17 years at the Bronx Borough President's Office under 3 borough presidents, Adolfo Carrion Jr., Ruben Diaz Jr., and Vanessa Gibson, various roles in planning and development and capital programs, working with capital budgeting. I was also the president of the American Planning Association's New York Metro chapter for 4+ years between 2012 and 2016. And I've worked in a variety of not-for-profits and public sector places, just doing planning, community development, and not-for-profit work. I born in New Rochelle, raised in the Bronx, and currently I'm married with a 7-month-old boy named Luca. So he's a good boy, but he keeps me busy on top of the work I do here in Mount Vernon. And very excited to be at this point for the city, nearing the adoption of the city's first comprehensive plan since 1968. It's been a long 57 years, but we are here. But I always tell people, don't fret over it, because places like New York City have never had a comprehensive plan. So it's not like we stand out in any way, but we're just getting our feet back on the ground and ready to walk forward.
So, Commissioner, before we kind of jump into the comprehensive plan, you said you were president of the kind of regional APA for about a 4-year period. Kind of what was the geographical territory that covered, from kind of what was the southernmost part to the northernmost part of under your presidency?
Sure. So we have 4 sections in the chapter: New York City, all of Long Island, and 2 lower Hudson Valley sections, which have been recently named the Tappan Zee section and the Catskill Taconic. So they stretch up all the way north to Dutchess County, Orange, and Ulster counties. So I always tell folks everything from Port Jervis and Kingston all the way out to Montauk and Tottenville. So we cover it, compared to other states, we're a small geographic area, but we're the largest metropolitan area. So we go pretty far, pretty much wherever the Metro North and LIR go, is where we go.
And so you were able to kind of be involved and look at and have not necessarily oversee, but be aware of comprehensive planning that was happening all the way up from the Catskills down to Long Island, right? And seeing kind of some of the trends throughout the region, what people were doing around neighborhood preservation, downtown revitalization, housing trends for young professionals, for seniors, for families, and the like. And you're still involved in that planning association, correct?
Absolutely. After hours, I'm the chapter's chapter administrator, helping them out. Post-COVID, a lot of it's a volunteer, not-for-profit organization, and just given my experience, they asked for help. And so, as I have many times in my life had like after-hours side gigs just to help maintain. They're the professional advocacy organization for urban planning, and so just making sure me and our 1,400 colleagues in the region doing this work, are in good standing and have the resources that they need.
And I would say in the Bronx, you probably covered revitalization and development being done from Riverdale to, Boston Post to Fordham
Yeah.
Road and everywhere in between, correct?
Yes, and I appreciate that. Just us old Bronxites still call it Boston Post Road, but it's I was responsible for a lot of housing. Between capital programs, playing community development. We invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the development of housing. The money that we invested, because we had a discretionary pool of money that kind of just leveraged, private investment as well as tax credits, home funds, CDBG dollars that leveraged over $14 billion of development in the Bronx and built tens of thousands of housing units, both affordable and market rate,
Okay.
and primarily mixed use development.
Well, I just wanted, kind of our community to get a understanding of your scope of work and your credentials, that you're not new to this. And then, as you said, being a Bronx guy right over the border, when I interviewed you at first, you let me know how familiar you are with Mount Vernon. And, this is kind of part of your old stomping grounds as you were growing up and came into Mount Vernon often. So I know that recently we put out a draft of our comprehensive plan, and today is the 6th. So on the 8th at 7 p.m. at City Council chambers,
Yes.
and then on the 14th at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers, there will be 2 public hearings for people to kind of weigh in and discuss their thoughts on the comprehensive plan. From there, the council will continue to consider the draft report and any other affiliated reports that go along with it. And then they'll look to adopt it or go back, and look at more things. Tell us what that process looks like.
Sure. So we've come to the end of a very long process of outreach and community engagement. And, there's been a lot of questions about, why did we approach a comprehensive plan the way we did, and like what it all means in terms of not only for the city overall, but for the neighborhood. And so what you're going to experience if you attend, and we encourage folks to attend, and if they cannot, to send in public comments, is on the 8th at 7 p.m. and the 14th at 6 p.m. is your opportunity to react to the comprehensive plan. So
And can I just stop for a second? Because oftentimes we talk to each other, right? And in talking to each other, we know what we're talking about. But for the larger public, just so you understand, when we're talking about a comprehensive plan, we're talking about a comprehensive land use plan. And he'll explain it a little bit more as we go in. But it talks about a comprehensive land use plan really defines, what we're doing in different neighborhoods, single family homes, low density, middle density, higher density neighborhoods, where we're building out kind of retail and shopping and food and beverage districts, what we're doing with our parks and our playgrounds and our parkland, what we're doing with our industrial and manufacturing neighborhoods in the city, how we're going to deal with transportation, with not only people getting to Mount Vernon, but how we get around Mount Vernon. What are we looking to do for our roads, economic development? So many of those things are included in the comprehensive plan, and we're going to break that down a little bit more as we go. But, before we kind of talked about the schedule and the process, I wanted you to understand when we're talking about the comprehensive plan that we're talking about the comprehensive land use plan and how our community is preserved and is developed as we go forward in this process. I believe the last time that this process was fully executed was in 1968. I
Yes.
know there back in 2010 under Mayor Clinton Young, there was a comprehensive planning process that took place, but it never got across to being ratified or voted on, because when he didn't come back into office, it never moved forward. It kind of just sat on the shelf. And so I didn't want to take any credit away from the work that he worked to do in 2010, but that was the challenge, is that, when you don't have continuity in leadership, oftentimes what happens is what was started, the race that was started, doesn't make it across the finishing line. And so we've been fortunate to be able to carry this over the end of my first term and into the beginning of this second term. And, thanks to you, thanks to the council, thanks to our partners, our community members, the advisory board, I think we are close to completion, but I'll let you take it from there again. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. You made a key point there regarding continuity. It's years ago, and we've been trying to change the narrative in the planning community. It's like planners just plan and plans go on the shelf. Planners need to be doers, and so a lot of my colleagues and I have tried to push that narrative, change the narrative, get involved in other areas, and we cover a lot of these areas in the comprehensive plan. And so, what the comprehensive plan is, it's a 10-year vision. So we defined it as 10 years. It could be a 5-year vision. It could be a 20-year vision, depending on the community you're working in. And when we say community, that's up to us to decide. The community we decided for was for the entire city, but folks come up with comprehensive plans for neighborhoods. I work for a not-for-profit housing company called Mount Hope Housing Company in the Bronx. And during the 90s, very famous community-based development plan that focused on 4 targeted neighborhoods. That just did neighborhood-based community plans back when the Bronx was still recovering from being entirely devastated, and they've become models of how to do it, grassroots up. But also places like Brooklyn has its own comprehensive plan that's adopted outside of New York City, and so you can do it on any level. It's just about how you do it, and the approach here, even though it's government-led, it's community-based. We've held over 30 public meetings in various forms, from something that we have unofficially trademarked as community conversations, where we've gone in and we've done kind of more introductory level kind of conversations, just to find out what's going on in each neighborhood. And it's not only neighborhood based, it was cohort and topical based as well. We address the Spanish-speaking community, Portuguese-speaking community, Haitian Creole, youth, seniors, just to see, what specific issues are there that need to be addressed, because not all communities are the same. Even though you're part of one community, there's micro communities, and so
Right.
how you engage and how you interact, not only amongst yourselves but with another micro community, can impact the quality of life for the entire city. One thing we try to champion is unity, bridging the gap from the rail cut. Just it's a mental gap as much as it is a physical gap, and just saying, hey, we're 4.4 square miles, 80 something thousand people in reality, and we gotta work together on things. And what this plan will do is forward that vision. And forwarding that vision means it's a balance of what the community wants with what the community needs.
Mhm.
It balances what residents ask for, as well as business stakeholders and folks looking to do business in Mount Vernon, trying to balance that, because too often folks have come to Mount Vernon with the shiny new penny and kind of flipped it in the air saying this is yours, when it was actually worth probably a peso. And what was given to developer was not equal to what Mount Vernon got back in return. So we're trying to change that narrative and find a balance between getting things done and getting what we want and what we need.
Yes, I think the comprehensive plan helps us define ourselves as a community. You know, I was the planning commissioner for a short time back in 2016. And I can tell you oftentimes the developers came to me and they were like, well, this is what's going on in New Rochelle. This is what's happening in White Plains. This is what's happening in Yonkers. This is what's happening here or there. And I was like, that's great. And there are different communities, right? And Mount Vernon is Mount Vernon. So we want to define ourselves for ourselves. It's like bringing someone into your house and them just saying, this is how we're going to renovate your house, and you don't have a say-so in it, right? You just give them carte blanche. Whereas, you know, if we want someone to come in and renovate our house, we really wanted them to understand what we're looking for. And if you're coming with projects that fit our vision, then it's going to be much easier to do work and come and do something. But we're not trying to be anyone else. We're trying to be Mount Vernon. And what does that look like, right? New Rochelle is twice our size physically in land. Well, they're closer to, I think, 11 miles. White Plains is 13 square miles, right? And Yonkers is 20 square miles. So Yonkers is 5 times our size in physical, you know, land. White Plains is 3 times our size, and New Rochelle is 2.5 times our size. So what we do here in Mount Vernon has to fit our community. It has to fit where we are. Mostly residential, a little bit of industrial land. We don't have maybe some of the waterfronts or some of the other things, but we do have really great transportation hubs. So again, we wanted to make sure this fits Mount Vernon's needs. And so let's kind of dive into this, because we have like really 59 minutes all together and we're already at 18. But I wanted to tee up the conversation and give people kind of an overview of where we are and what is being proposed based on, like you said, over 30 community workshops, surveys, outreaches, going and showing up at all the community events and speaking to over 1,000 people and getting their input. So, you know, it's not like this has been done in a vacuum. It's been done with the community. And as you said, it's been offered in several languages to several age groups, to several cultural backgrounds. And here we are, because we are a quilt. We've made sure that we've reached out to all of the different patches in the community.
Absolutely. You know, one thing the 2 things I want before we jump in is, like, when I talk about the comp plan, there's 2 things I always say. You know, it says, you touched upon it, is determining our identity. And so, you know, the type of thinking that we do, you know, sometimes is linear thinking, just like point A to point B. But I always try to look at it from, you know, at least, you know, triangulation there. It's just like, you know, like we're the city of Mount Vernon, suburb of New York, also kind of function as a Westchester village. And so folks see ourselves somewhere in there, and it's like, where in that are we? And so that's what we've been trying to do. And I always tell people, the comp plan is a beginning. It's not an end. You know, while it is adopted, it is official, it is set in stone in a certain way, but it's meant as a guide point. It means, okay, this is how we want to see it. The next 10 years, we have work to do. It doesn't mean the work has been done. It means the work needs to begin, and this is how we're going to work.
So, it gives us a framework.
Exactly.
It's a framework. There's nothing cookie cutter about it. Then we still have to go forward and do a rezoning process. We have to do all of our environmental studies. All of those things will happen along this route. So this is not the end. It is a road on the journey. It is a stop on the Metro North or the Amtrak line, whatever you want to call it, but it is not the end of the journey. So I know you have a PowerPoint ready for us. Sure. If you could, you want to start there?
Absolutely. Let's go through it.
All right, Jahi.
All right.
You can.
So we can click on. So how we approach the comprehensive plan. I'm going to stay on this a little bit. So we did this comprehensive plan in 2 phases. And we did that for multiple reasons. Phase 1 focused on the 50-ish block area of downtown. And phase 2 focused on the remainder of the city, also including some areas in downtown that are just kind of more interwoven with the city as a whole. Why did we do that? Well, number one, there's been a lot of pressure downtown. You know, we had a lot of developers seeing, you know, that we have a town center, that we have a very active Metro North Station, Petrillo Plaza, buses going through. And so there's a lot of interest, a lot of folks saying, hey, we want to do business. But we didn't really know how to respond to them. As I said, usually what has happened is that Mount Vernon has reacted to a proposal, reacted to an idea. It hasn't put forth, the city has not put forth what it wants to see. It's kind of ad hoc and reactive. And so like, this is where a lot of the development pressure is. Let's focus on downtown and get the ball rolling. Number two, some of the council like ran on a platform of putting a moratorium on development until the comp plan is done, and so we didn't want to just stop everything for multiple years. And since we had this momentum and interest downtown, it's like, all right, let's tackle where the pressure is and make sure that we do this right. And it's a good first step, since we haven't done this since 1968 successfully, and that has been since the early 20 teens, the last time we did it, in the post-COVID era, to make sure that we gain the community's trust as well as community interest. And so what we came up with that was adopted back in January was the phase one of the comprehensive plan. And then we took that, started working with a couple other consultants, kind of lessons learned, and make this even better. And we focus on the city not only for growth but for preservation as well. A lot of questions we heard is, what about my neighborhood? I like the way it is. And it's like, okay, that's part of the process. We hear you. But if there are some issues that we need to address, we need to do that as well. And so we took the comprehensive plan during phase two and looked at it, in 6 different ways, 6 different tranches. And so when you look through it, there's 6 chapters: the introduction, taking stock, which is, what's existing, what do we have here now, what are our assets, what are our resources that we can bring to the table. The next chapter is building a vision, just talking about what we did for outreach. How did we do this? How did we speak to all of you? What did we hear? And how do we process that? Chapter 4, placemaking, really focuses on, all right, what's my neighborhood going to look like? What are we talking about here? And I want to preface this saying we kept this very broad. Why did we keep this very broad? Because there is another step in this process, and that's rewriting our zoning ordinance. And I will talk more about that. That will get more specific with density. That will get more specific in terms of how our neighborhoods look. But we wanted to speak to that. We wanted to talk about just how are we going to grow in the next 10 years, or how are we going to preserve ourselves in the next 10 years. Core concepts talk about approximately a dozen areas, everything from housing to economic development to open space, transportation, effective government service, and addresses those issues with some goals and objectives. And finally, implementation is a matrix of all of those kind of laid out in areas in different forms, just so it's easy to read. Next. So here's the master plan themes that I was talking about. There's, I think 11, might be a dozen, but, Mount Vernon's role in the region, as I was talking about, our identity. Who are we? What role do we play? We're not living in a bubble, not living in isolation. So how do we play a role in Westchester County, the greater New York metropolitan area, the tri-state area? How can Mount Vernon thrive in various environments and various definitions? Celebrating and preserving Mount Vernon's historic legacy. There's a lot of history here. It's not only preserving, the quality of life in neighborhoods, but it's preserving the history. And we don't focus enough on the history. We talk about it, but we don't codify it. We don't identify it. We don't talk about landmarks. We don't talk about historic districts. We don't talk about wayfinding to guide people to where our history is. And we need to focus on that. Neighborhood diversity and inclusion. For 4.4 square miles, we have a lot of cultures living here, a lot of different people, a lot of different housing types and resources, a lot of different kind of, commercial opportunities available. And so, we want to talk to a bit about that and how we leverage that. The public realm and streetscapes, how do we engage our communities every day? What makes our communities great? And if there's an issue with our communities, how do we address to improve it? We talk, some just corridors for examples. How do we improve Lower Gramerton and South Fourth? That's our downtown. Everyone cares about downtown. It's one reason why we did the phase one, is just to, place that brings everyone together. To how do we improve the character of places like Sanford Boulevard, Columbus Avenue, which, there's a lot of traffic going up and down it, but how do we make it more of a place where people want to go and hang out? Housing access for all. So, Mount Vernon, city of homes, lots of different type of housing, diversity of housing, really precious older housing stock. And so how do we preserve those beautiful homes, but provide different opportunities? It's not all, not everyone can afford a single family home, but some folks want to invest in the community. How do we look at cooperatives and condominiums? How do we look at affordable cooperatives and condominiums for those people just looking to, make their first step towards the American dream? How do we, keep our young folk from looking elsewhere? How do we make our environment a comfortable place where people want to live? Green space and connections to the natural environment. So it's just looking at what we have in terms of our green space and looking for, additional opportunities. Some of it is, new parks, some of it are connective greenways, and some of it are, creating bike lanes so people have access to, green space. And how do we do that the right way and just not do it in a random way? Healthy, safe, and active communities. It's kind of related to not only green space, but transportation. How do we, this is more like about public health. It's more about everything from getting people to be more active to having people being able to simply cross the street. One thing we have a issue with is, crosswalk signals. And we have an aging community. We have a thriving young community. Well, how do we keep it safe for them? What things do we implement to make sure that, Mount Vernon thrives? Resiliency and sustainability, that's everything from, green buildings and healthy building living to our sewer system, just making sure that we're resilient and that, everything from making sure our streets are clean to make sure that the runoff that we have, that our sewers can handle it, making sure that the Hutchison and Bronx rivers are clean and safe and we can re-engage them in ways that we never thought possible. It means tree coverage. How do we plant more trees in neighborhoods? It means solar. It means electric vehicles. It means all of that. Economic development. It's not only our retail strips, but how do we attract more office? How do we look at our industrial base, which we have a strong industrial base, believe it or not, but how do we modernize it? How do we keep it and modernize it and make it, an even, more robust and healthier industrial area? Reliable and modern infrastructure. I talked a little bit about the sewers, but also we're seeing like the bridges over the Metro North cuts being replaced, but how do we maintain our streets? I said, we build, rain gardens to prevent runoff, and our electric grid, looking at alternative forms of energy just so we can be resilient in that way in case there's a type of a disaster. And I mentioned earlier, effective government service. How can government serve you better? There's, we hear complaints out in the planning department, but, about other departments as well. And so, we address that as well. Next, please. So talking about some of the community engagement from August 2022, we issued a request for a proposal for consultants to come aboard, and we adopted, we brought on in January 2023 the consultants and did the first phase of the comprehensive plan. When that was adopted back January 2024, we wanted to keep the momentum going. So November 2023 through July, we had our phase two. And so we did a number of, what we call community conversations, which are smaller geographic and cohort-based programs, as well as larger public workshops and, participating in City Fest, just to get the word out. And having over 30 events and over 1,000 people in total attend really was a great opportunity to get a snapshot of, what people are feeling, what people want, what they feel the city needs, and just trying to look at it through multiple lenses of what they think is good for the city. Next.
James, I just want to say before we jump into economic development,
Sure.
Jahi, if you could just bring us back on screen for a second, because I want to be very clear. When you talk about 30 workshops and community conversations, you did them at churches, you did them in school buildings, you did them in community centers,
Yeah.
you did them at city locations like the Dole Center. So we did them on the north side, the south side, the east side, the west
Yeah.
side. We did them in English, Spanish, French Creole, so that people who spoke different languages could participate. We had special ones for our seasoned seniors, and for
Hmm.
our young adults, we trained young people to be able
Yep.
to
Sent
speak
them
to
out.
young people about land use planning and sent them out. And so, if people were interested in being involved, they were involved, right? Some people will say, well, not everyone participated. No one participates in everything, but there were plenty of opportunities, over 30 opportunities for people who wanted to come out and speak about this to do so. They were widely advertised
Yeah.
and shared. So, yeah, I just want to thank you and your team and our consultants for really taking that community engagement piece of it seriously and participating. So thank you for making
Absolutely.
sure that
You
happened.
know,
And then we even challenged those who came to tell a friend, tell a neighbor. And then we had some people who came not to one, not to two, but to 5 to 10 workshops. They were really engaged and
absolutely.
wanted to learn what this looked like. We asked them what they wanted to see: restaurants, stores, entertainment places, destinations, what kind of retail. Um, and this is my last thing I'm gonna say because I know you have so much. People don't understand that the city of Mount Vernon doesn't own the land where people have stores, and we can't dictate what is built or opened, but the comprehensive plan does say what type of services and what type of businesses we want to see in certain neighborhoods. So when Stop and Shop chose to leave Mount Vernon, people said, well, you shouldn't have let anything other than a supermarket open there. That's not necessarily legal. We work to look for a supermarket, but you can, the landowner and the property owner gets to decide what they're going to bring in there as long as it fits within our zoning laws and our regulations. Is that correct? Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can encourage, we can have conversations and move it along and give property owners an idea of the vision and what the community wants. But at the end of the day, they may come back saying, all right, we have A, but we're going to give you a lesser version of A that really doesn't serve the community well. Or we could give you B, which isn't exactly the same, but it can serve the community very, very well. And so, but at the end of the day, a private property owner can do, as long as it's legal, as long as it's according to zonings and building regulation, they can build as of right. I know some folks don't like that, but it's like, think about like your personal property. If we suddenly told you we have to, no, you have to do this, change that, this, that, and the other thing, because even though the laws and the regulations say this, on a whim, we want something different. And we have to, we have to go through the government process of like, okay, how do we change it? How do we get these approvals? But in terms of the outreach, yeah, it wasn't only like through social media that we did this. We did bus ads, we did Metro North ads, um, we did the number of surveys. We sent out the youth, pound the pavement in the neighborhood, um, to do this. We worked with homeowners associations to get this. We're door hangers. We did a double number of door hangers. On one side was the comp plan, and the other side was the tenant bill of rights. And so, yeah, we did a fair amount of actually literally pound the pavement kind of outreach.
Okay. Thank you. So, okay, you can jump back into economic
Sure,
development.
no
Thank you so
problem.
much.
So economic development, very, very important and close to the mayor's heart. Next slide. So, economic development means different things to different people. As I was saying, it could mean a thriving retail corridor, it could mean a thriving um, business or industrial corridor. It could just mean, hey, there's a lot of programs here that helps us thrive. So, in sparking economic development, one thing we have to look at, and thank you, Wills, we did a lot of email blasts too. Um, One thing that we got to look at is like, what do we have as a city? What kind of assets do we have, and what can we do with it? Between the city, the Urban Redevelopment Agency, and the Industrial Development Agency, we have a lot of parcels, both large and small, both scattered and aggregated. And so part of this plan is like looking at what we have and how can the city spark economic development? How can we spark mixed use development? I mean, that was important. Is that just going back to my experience in the Bronx is just kind of like looking at city assets and being the model, just being the world that we want to see. And so just working with those assets, coming up with mixed income, mixed use development, green building developments, addressing the retail and office needs that we need, addressing the institutional needs that we need through what we own. And so, as you can see in the map, we have a good potential. So it's not only asking developers to put the money where their mouth is, it's us doing the same. It's us, kind of looking at the comp plan, following the comp plan, and saying, "Hey, we hear you. We're with you, and we're willing to, take this journey with you for the betterment of our city." Next. So one area that's been brought up is what's called the Canal Village area. If you're not familiar with Canal Village, it's the area of Parkside, the south side, near the Hutchinson River, going all the way down to from like Memorial Field down to the Bronx border. It's a thriving industrial area. Surprising for the region, as we lose industrial uses. But as thriving as it is, not, it's not the best welcome for Mount Vernon. It's not the, welcome to Mount Vernon if you're driving up Sanford or Columbus. That this is, what represents our city, and a lot of people see it that way. So, what the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program is, and we were accepted into the program for this area that you see to do some cleanup. That if you have a property and you are looking to either improve your current use or look at new uses or mixed uses, that you can tap into both state and federal funding to help you clean that up. So not only do you develop, not only does it benefit the city, it benefits the overall public health for the city. And it's part of a vision plan that we came up for this area back in 2017, that was finally accepted at the state just this past year. It was a plan that was sent to the state, but kind of fell by the wayside thanks to COVID. But back in 2023, we revived it, and we're looking at it again. We want to see mixed-use development. We want to see industrial areas continue to thrive, and we want waterfront opportunities. The Hutchinson River is a resource. It shouldn't just be a dumping area. It's not an estuary for industrial uses or waste to be carried down. It's a place to be engaged, and so we're going to be looking at that coming down the road. Next. Neighborhood diversity and inclusion. Next slide. So I want to dive into a very hot topic since the plan was released, and that is our placemaking chapter and density. I know there's been some chatter on various applications and various community engagement platforms about what we presented in the comprehensive plan for neighborhoods and how we defined it. As I mentioned, we kept our definitions very vague. We gave definitions for folks just so they understand what it generally can mean. But, we kind of looked at neighborhoods and said, okay, what exists? What's the character and how do we want to maintain and keep it? We are actually moving from a zoning and development standpoint. We're changing our formula. We're changing our calculations on how to develop. We're moving from what's called a units per acre model over to a floor to area ratio model. What does that mean? Right now, units per acre is say you take a 1 acre property and you say you can build 3 housing units on that. What does that mean? It means you can just build 3 units. Doesn't really define the square footage, doesn't define how many bedrooms. So that could be 3 studios, 3, 4 bedrooms. You don't really know. And so while that's, a more quote unquote suburban model, it doesn't speak to like where Mount Vernon is. These are talking about like more rural, more kind of exurb, suburban type of areas that have large parcels, um, large lots, which 4.4 square miles, not that big. So we kind of generally define things from a residential standpoint: low density, medium density, high density, along with neighborhood mixed use and kind of larger mixed use neighborhoods and developments and where the opportunities were. So we gave definitions and we gave some examples like low density 1, low density 2, low density 3 with the floor to area ratio, which the floor to area ratio focuses on, say, 10,000 square feet of land and has a ratio, a number attached to it. What does that mean? So if you have a 10,000 square feet of land and you have a FAR, floor to area ratio, of 1.5, that means you can build up to 15,000 square feet on that lot. 0.6 means you can build 6,000 square feet on that 10,000 square foot of land. And so for low density, obviously you're going to see lower numbers, high density, higher numbers. And so when we talk about low density, that can mean a lot of things. First thing most people think of is single family home. Absolutely. Single family homes are the quintessential low density models, but 2 and 3 family homes can be considered low density as well. But when you go into a neighborhood, you may not be able to immediately tell if something is 1 family, 2 family, or 3 family. Usually it's by the mailboxes or the energy meters. And so what we wanted to do was, when we gave those definitions, I know some folks said, hey, are you building duplexes and triplexes? Like what's going on here? What we did was we kept it very general. We gave the definition, we gave what the FAR is, and then on this map we said Pasadena Park, for example, we said is all low density. I know a lot of some folks reacted saying, hey, we're single family homes. Are you eliminating single family zoning and making it all triplexes? And the answer is no, we are not doing that.
Can you repeat that? No, we are not eliminating.
No, we are not eliminating single family homes.
Okay.
We're not eliminating single family homes. And I know a lot of municipalities around the country are doing that. Probably the most largest example is Minneapolis, but we are not doing that here. What we are doing is, because there is another step in this process, and that's rewriting the zoning ordinance, is we did not want to lock ourselves in at this point. Again, the comprehensive plan is beginning. It is not an end. It is saying, hey, Pasadena is going to be low density, but when you rewrite the zoning ordinance, what kind of low density is that? Because there are certain low density neighborhoods, some parts of the north side, many parts of the south side that, might be 2 family homes, but you drive by them and it's like, oh, it's a house on a 3,000 square foot lot, has a backyard, still low density. So we're going to define that, by each neighborhood. Once we do that, we're going to be doing another level of outreach. So if you participate in a community conversation or public workshop, doing that again. And that's the purpose of getting nuance and getting more detailed with the zoning ordinance.
So the comprehensive plan kind of is, like you said, the framework. Mm-hmm. And then when we redo the zoning ordinances, that will even be a deeper dive that will speak kind of more specifically and drill down deeper into neighborhoods and what can happen in different neighborhoods or on different blocks and things of that nature, correct?
Exactly, exactly. I'm going to be straight with everyone. We could have done this all at the same time, done zoning ordinance and comprehensive plans. The traditional way is to do it sequentially, but more and more trying to do it all at once. But, being straight, we're a community that's getting back on our feet. We had a financial crisis. We're completing our audits. We're getting into good financial standing. But, we had to do this kind of sequentially because it's what, financially it made sense for the city. It gave
And
us
then
the
we
time.
also, and I think we also wanted to make sure that our residents had an opportunity to
Yep.
participate in the process, since
I was
this
going
is
to say
something
that.
they
Yes.
haven't done. We know that there is a
Yeah.
lot of distrust of government, and that oftentimes misinformation and disinformation is spread more quickly than the actual facts, right? And so we wanted to bring the community along with us as leadership. I mean, you're a planner and you've done this for decades. The
Hmm.
process is a little newer to me, right? Because the last time a
Yep.
comprehensive plan had been done in the city of Mount Vernon was 1968, the year I was born. So in my lifetime, this has not happened. So we didn't want to just rush the process. And we haven't, we've been involved in this over 2.5 years. But again, if we want to have the economic revitalization of Mount Vernon, if we want to revitalize our infrastructure, we had to move on defining for our residents and people who want to move here and those who live here, and then also for other retail and housing and business and industrial investors, what is allowable and what we're looking for in our community so that they can do this. New Rochelle did this 15 years ago. And so you see development happening in New Rochelle. Yonkers did it years ago. White Plains did it years ago. Mount Vernon, we hadn't done it since 1968. And we can't wait another 58 years to do it. We know, everyone says they want change and they don't want change at the same time. Right? People keep
Yeah.
comparing us to other communities. Well, those other communities are taking small steps to change. We can't expect overnight change, but then we don't want anything to change at the same time. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and let you get back in. I'm
What a lot of
sorry.
people want is improvement. They want
Right.
improvement. And sometimes improvement, you just need that catalyst for change because there's no impetus for people unless there's some incentive. And if we could get to the next slide, please. So I want to compare Pasadena to another neighborhood, Sunset Hill. So that's over north between North Mount Vernon West Station and Fleetwood Station. Kind of High Street Terrace over there. The reason I'm highlighting this because this is more of a hodgepodge neighborhood, and there's a lot of some single family homes and some mixed with some 2 and 3 family and small apartment buildings on these blocks. But places like near Lincoln Avenue where it curves over there along the Queston Parkway, we're seeing some residential development that's a little more dense. And so how do we address that? How do we address those development pressures? But those smaller middle side streets, how do we preserve that character? Just we can allow for development over there because they're close to the train stations, but we can't overrun those neighborhoods. And I know that was a concern for a lot of people. When we talk about increasing density, we want to focus, particularly around the Metro North stations. Number one, talk about like where the buses are, particularly like Petrillo Plaza. It's looking at underutilized strips, like reimagining Sanford Boulevard. Not necessarily, building the same 20-story towers like along Sanford, but how do we utilize that land from just being either vacant or mostly a parking lot, and allow for some housing above retail, that to help keep the big box that we stores that we see there thrive. How do we support that? And in places like Sunset Hill, not necessarily big box, but look for opportunities like at the corner of like Lincoln and Stevens, and the Queston Parkway while maintaining the rest of the character and just right sizing that development.
And being
Where
able to attract neighborhood businesses like a Starbucks, like a
yeah.
coffee shop or a tea shop, like a bookstore, like the cleaners. When businesses are looking to come into neighborhoods, they're looking for foot traffic. When
Mm-hmm.
restaurants are looking, sit down restaurants, not fast food restaurants, but when
Yep.
sit down restaurants are looking to come into neighborhoods, they're looking for foot traffic. They're looking to see how many people live in the neighborhood. And again, all of these types of businesses help to expand our tax base and then allow us as a community. We are not poor. The challenge is that we don't have some of the places where we really want to spend our money to spend our money. And so when we're looking for sit down restaurants, we go outside of the city. When you're looking to shop at certain stores, you go outside of the city. When you're looking for certain entertainment, you go outside of the city. When you're looking to stay at a hotel or have family members stay at a hotel, we go outside of the city. And so we have to bring these businesses into our community so that we can recycle our dollars and make sure that the tax base grows so that the residential taxes can decrease or stabilize.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
And
that's that big economic development part of this. It's not just about what type of housing and where the housing is, but how we utilize this plan to also attract neighborhood businesses, industry, and larger stores like supermarkets and other things to strengthen our tax base and to provide the neighborhood and community services that our residents are looking for and deserve.
yeah, that's why when you look at this map, like you see like where the higher density is, it's like extending from like the Mount Vernon West TOD, transit oriented development, that was done a few years back, which if you consider that near Mount Vernon West station, you see higher development. But as you go further east along Mount Vernon Avenue, you know, when you reach Lincoln and Stevens, you know, the cap is at 5 stories. And so we're trying to look at that and leverage that where are existing apartment buildings that may have some vacant lots around it. So you allow some density there. But as I say, you look at High Street, Terrace, over there, just going north and south, as you see on the map, it's, you know, it's a lower density. It's a lower density, even though there is some hodgepodge. It's just like, okay, you know, we can maybe build like 3-family home there, maybe, but you know, we're not going to be building, you know, taller apartment buildings on those blocks. And so it's balancing with what exists, with, you know, what the potential is in the right place. And I said those are the vacant lots for what already exists for like that has a little bit of density. Next slide, please. So effective government service. Next slide. I want to talk about this a little bit because it's great that you're doing the plan, but I don't trust government. How are we getting this done? And so we heard you, we understand you. You know, we've experienced this ourselves, you know, having, you know, being residents wherever we're residents. And so we work with our consultants to identify 7 areas where we can, you know, have more effective government. You know, that's strategic planning and goal setting, keeping this energy of just doing planning, you know, focusing on efficient organizational management, making sure that, you know, the systems in place are, you know, not only effective but supportive, you know, so supportive systems that if there's any type of fail safe, anything goes wrong, that there's a fail safe there to keep it going. Effective budgeting and resource allocation, making sure our budget is tight. Said we're finishing up our audits, but you know, a few years back things kind of got out of hand. How do we prevent that? How do we stop that from happening again? Investing in technology and innovation. You know, a lot of people like the way things are, the way things go, but as time goes on, current technologies become outdated. And so how do we keep up to make sure that government is serving you best? You know, for example, if you've experienced OpenGov, um, OpenGov has helped our buildings department and our land use boards very effectively instead of mounds and mounds of paper having to be produced. You know, we're doing things online, you know, making it quicker. We're not quite there yet, but it's, you know, steps in the process. Making sure we have a qualified and motivated workforce. You know, hiring your neighbor, hiring your cousin and such is great, but we need folks who have the credentials. So it's that balance of hiring the community, but it's also training the community effectively. Community engagement, communication, making sure this dialogue keeps going. We got to make sure it keeps going. And finally, coming back to it, monitoring, evaluation, continuous improvement. That's kind of what the comprehensive plan is. Every 10 years, we have to come back to it saying what worked, what didn't, how can we get better? How can we improve? Same goes for government as well. Next slide. So if you want to review the draft, please go to envisionmountvernon.com, envisionmtvernon.com. There should be a link directly there that takes you. Click on the different tabs for engagement just to see what we've done. It's also on the splash page for cmvny.com too. That's the City of Mount Vernon's main page. You'll see a nice graphic of 10 years forward, Envision Mount Vernon. Just click on that and check things out.
All right. So, Commissioner, I want to thank you so much. We did see a comment here from Frances Pettiford, who was a very engaged citizen, and I appreciate her. And so she was saying, isn't all of this development causing our communities to flood? Well, what's causing the communities to flood is more rain. And so as we're moving forward in developing here in Mount Vernon, part of our requirements that we are putting in are making sure that there is a certain amount of permeable surface, right? That water can go in, that there are water culverts that collect the water that falls on that property, that there are green roofs that can help absorb some of the water that is falling, onto the roofs of the building. And it's not just pouring off the side of the building, running down into the street and going into the storm drains, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're taking into Ms. Pettiford, we're taking into account climate change and the impact of extreme weather. We're taking into account rising electric and gas costs and how we can build more green and more efficiently. So we're taking into account making sure that we're planting more trees and continuing to expand stormwater management and things of that nature. So these are things that we're taking into account as we are looking what to do in different neighborhoods and how we're looking to do that. So anything closing? You have 1 minute to close, Commissioner.
I strongly encourage everyone to come on the 8th and the 14th. If you can't physically, please send in to the city clerk's office your thoughts and comments on the comprehensive plan. I know it's 400 something pages, but if you can't get through it all, what areas of the comprehensive plan do you care about? What topic areas? Is it open space? Is it housing? Is it economic development? Is it government service? Just focus on those areas and please submit comments. They will all be taken into consideration. I said, we all have different viewpoints. We all have different expertise. And so we're going to consider it all and just try to mesh it all together, collaborate those ideas, and try to come out with the best product that Mount Vernon can utilize and work from for the next 10 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you and all that you're bringing to the table, and your staff and our partners, our contractors, our council, our advisory board members, and everyone who's participated in this process. Again, everyone, Wednesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. City Council Chambers, and October 8th at 7 p.m. in Council Chambers, and October 14th at 6 p.m. in Council Chambers. And you can also send in written comments to the City Clerk's office. Everyone take care and have a wonderful and amazing night. God bless.